Salam, Miss Sanobar. I'm an Iranologist and I'm working about researching about migration from Iran, of especially Zoroastrian people. So please, can you tell me something, whatever you know about migration of Zoroastrian people or later migrants like Iranians? So tell me whatever you know.
See, I am not an authority on anything, but I can tell you a story that was told to me by my grandparents. From my mother's side, her father migrated. He reached Bombay in early 1910, and he was a son of a peasant in the province of Taft in the district of Yazd in Iran. From what I know, there were two districts left which had any Zoroastrians at all at that time. One was Kerman and one was Yazd. And we come from Yazd. And I have been there in 1971. I went back with my mother and my brother and to her ancestral village. And we still have relatives there. And what my grandfather told me is that his elder brother had already come to Bombay, where they were people, they co-religionists were there, the Parsis, and who would somehow help out a little bit in getting a job as a shop assistant, a salesman in a shop. And normally they had this practice of living in that same shop and cooking there, just like many of the UP migrants do in Bombay, and then working in the daytime and keeping the shop clean and sleeping there at night and bathing in somewhere nearby and things like that, till they found enough money and a small home to live in, the Iranis. So the story is that when did the second migration of Zoroastrian Iranians begin to come to India? So it must have been about a century and a half or 2 centuries ago. If my grandfather is 1910, it must have been another. There is that you can actually date it because, but that you'll have to check on the history. And actually, we owe it to a woman called Gulistan, and she was one very beautiful young girl living in a village in Kerman, province of Kerman. And that time Zoroastrian Iranis were treated very much like how Dalit untouchables were treated in India. And for example, they had no access to education because all education possible was for men in the madrasas, Muslim madrasas. Secondly, they were not. There was a strange thing that they could not repair broken houses or repair their broken agyaris and stuff like that. So the third thing was I think that was important. They couldn't have their anjuman. That means they could not have organizations. It was not allowed because I think the rulers and others recognize the fact that once people are organized, it's dangerous for the powers that be. So the fourth thing was that a lot of rich Muslim landlords would just grab women from the Zoroastrian community whom they liked and keep them in their house as concubines, as in the harem. The other thing was that one strange thing was that Zoroastrian Iranians could not ride horses; they could only ride on donkeys. And
turn right onto Mahashikav Marg.
If on the road they found that there is a Muslim that they know is coming from in front, they had to dismount from the donkey and keep walking at the side of the donkey till the Muslim had passed them. So this kind of norms were enforced against Zoroastrian Iranis to keep them in their place and make them feel like second class citizens, I suppose. So this led to extreme poverty, and a lot of people were their poverty, as well as another rule that the Qajar kings made, forced a lot of Zoroastrians to embrace Islam. One rule was that if even one person in a family embraced Islam, all the wealth, the land, the house, all the wealth of the family then thereafter belonged to only that one man who had embraced Islam. So obviously if one person bit the bait, the whole family would convert, because otherwise they would be left high and dry. But anyway, there was only a few hundreds of Zoroastrians left a century and a half ago in the provinces of Kerman and Yazd. And so now to come to Gulistan. So Gulistan was a young girl of 14 or maybe less, and the local landlord of a village in Kerman was desirous of grabbing her and keeping her as a concubine. To save her from this fate, her father and her uncle, who was a trader who had been to Bombay and who was to trade with India, who'd been a couple of times to India and returned back, they decided that they would spirit her away in the middle of the night and somehow bring her to safety here, and the Parsi co-religionists would then give her some shelter and all that. So that's what they did. They came all the way to Bombay. They contacted, I think there was a family, I can't remember the surname, maybe Tamboli or something, who took her in and kept her and all that. And after she was 15 or 16, they got her married to a very rich local man called Mr. Framji Pandey. And she had 3 daughters and 2 sons. And one of her daughters married into the Petit family and all. And as she grew older, I mean, she didn't return. Her father and uncle returned after they left her in the care of the local Parsis. But she kept on troubling her sons that, like, now we're so wealthy and I'm so worried about my family and other Zoroastrians in Iran. Can't we do something about them? So the sons, under her guidance and at her insistence, they formed an organization or a sort of, a trust or something called the Irani Zoroastrians Amelioration Committee. Okay. And they put out a advertisement in the local newspapers asking for anybody who would volunteer to go to Iran, do a study of what is the fate of and what the Zoroastrian community there is, how they are living, what are they suffering from, what are their problems, and make a report back here, a kind of fact-finding report. So they put out this ad, and there was one guy who's later known as the first, we could call him the first Parsi missionary, called Manikji Limji Hataria. You know, his photograph is there in many of our big Atas Berams and Agyaris. It's there in my Agyari in Pune, means where my parents used to worship. And you know, he's standing there. I don't have it, but we can find it online. Hataria's. He's got a long flowing
Yes,
beard.
I saw his photo.
Yeah, you know, he's got a sword and a big trench coat and all. So he volunteered, and he and his son, and he had he used to work in Sindh under the British Raj and all that. He was in the admin departments and all. So he knew a couple of languages, he knew Persian. And so he volunteered to go and to make this report to the Parsi Panchayat, not Parsi Panchayat, to this amelioration committee set up by Gulistan and her 2 sons. Okay, so they gave him a good amount of money and all the wherewithal he wanted, and he went, he and his son went to Iran and went to Yazd, Kerman, did a study and found out all these things that I've just told you. I've read his report, so that's why I'm telling you all this. It's all on the net. And then he came back and he presented his report here and all that. And then he told the Parsi Panchayat this is how things are there. But he was quite a man, because he persuaded the Parsis, the Parsi Panchayat, to ask for Parsi men who were teachers to go back with him, to Iran, so they could set up schools for the Irani Zoroastrians there who didn't know how to read and write and in such a desperate condition. Secondly, he persuaded the Parsi Panchayat to commit to helping Irani Zoroastrians who would come here, and at least one from a family or 2 from a family who could get a job here, and therefore they could send money back, or they could raise the standard of living of and get their family members in Iran out of this dire poverty that they were in. So he really had some, along with Gulistan's son, they persuaded the Parsi Panchayat. So more than a couple of young Parsi men who had trained as teachers went back to Iran with him. And they set up the schools. So actually Hataria is credited with having introduced modern education into Iran per se, not just for the Zoroastrians but for everybody. Then Hataria realized that he would have to shift. The seat of power was Tehran, but Yazd is far away, Kerman is far away from Tehran. So he saw that it's important to shift some of the the Zoroastrian Iranian families to Tehran to be closer to the center of power. So he shifted some families into Tehran and got some places for them to stay. This is the time of the Qajar dynasty. And but another great thing he did, of course, he came back, and after some years, his wife died, his children grew up. So he went back to Iran with his two sons. He married again there, and he died in Iran. So basically, he is the person who opened up, who made the Parsis here aware about the dire straits that their co-religionists were suffering from in Iran. Secondly, he got them to commit to get them jobs and see that people started coming from Iran to get some money and make some money, so that people could survive better there. And thirdly, introduced modern education to Iran per se. And I don't know if he's that much celebrated in Iran, but he must be for having introduced. So he moved people. Now the other really interesting thing he did, and it took him a long time to do, was the one thing that really impoverished the Zoroastrians there was that they had to pay the jizya tax. You know very well what is the jizya tax because we're in India. So all non Muslims in Iran had to pay a major part of their income as jizya tax to the king. So this guy, Hataria, he used to regularly visit the court of the Qajar king to try to get an audience with the king to persuade him not to lift these burdenous tax of jizya tax on Zoroastrian citizens. It took a long time in doing that. The way he managed it was that he got the Parsi Panchayat here to put pressure on the British to tell their, what was the guy who used to be called the protector, the head of the protectorate, their agent, their representative to the court of the Qajar king, because Iran was a British protectorate, so it was under British rule, indirect British rule. So they persuaded the British here to tell their British guys there, they were guiding the Qajar king, that you must lift the jizya tax on the Zoroastrians. So this is the major thing the other major thing that Hataria did. And I don't think, I didn't know about this till I was 64 years old, 63 years old. And I don't think many people know, a few people know who are interested, but I think the community at vast does not know. And I used to see Hataria's photograph in my agyari whenever we were taken there by my parents to pray. And I used to wonder who the hell this guy is. But I remember my grandfather always touching Hataria's photograph in respect, so I knew some big man. Anyway, so Hataria managed to get, successfully managed to get after an audience with the king. And that is recorded online, it's worth reading. So the Qajar king tries to find out something which is like un-Islamic in Hataria's religion, and he then is not able to, he says you worship fire, so you worship God. He wanted to capture Hataria into saying that yes, we worship idols, which we don't. That's not allowed in the Muslim religion either. So the way Hataria gets around all this is really worth reading. I mean, I don't remember the details. It's a 3-page exchange which is recorded between Hataria and the king. But anyway, at the end of all these efforts of Hataria, the king did withdraw the jizya tax on the Zoroastrians. Okay, the last Qajar king. So this also helped those guys to thoda punji to hath mein aaya, means they could collect some capital. They could send the people here. They could have access to education. They could better their lives by getting better jobs in administration situations, not just remain cultivators and things like that. So that's when the second wave of migration from Zoroastrians from Iran started. So thanks to Hataria, to Gulistan first, then to her sons and her who set up the Iranian Zoroastrian Amelioration Committee, and of course a great thanks to Hataria, and who actually started this whole influx again from Iran to India. So my grandfather from both sides, my mother's father came in 1910, and my great-great-grandfather from my father's side, his name was Aspander Nasarvanji. He came from part earlier than my mother's father. He came to India and then settled in Pune. So he is the first Irani to settle in the city of Pune. Okay, and So the fire temple, which is the fire temple of the Iranis, the Kadmi, of those who go by the Kadmi calendar in Pune, uh, it's called Komrani Agyari. That means it's got a weathercock on its steeple, so that's why it's called that. And it has a picture of my great great grandfather, who lived to the ripe age of 110. You know, and grew a new set of teeth when he turned 100. That's what we do here. But anyway, he was the first Irani to settle in Pune. Okay, Zoroastrian Irani, the second migration. So this is how they came, and they all settled here. My friend that I told you about, the scholar Rashid Wadia, told me that his mother's father, his mother was an Irani, his father was a Parsi. His mother's father also came as part of the second migration from abject poverty. And before I forget, I must tell you about my grandfather who came. He said that his mother tied up 9 naans, the big naan, and a big block of the sour cheese, the Iranian cheese, in a handkerchief, big handkerchief. And whatever money she had, she gave him that, and she gave him this, and she hoped that it would last him for some part of the journey. I just remember that. So this is how they came. They came in absolute poverty, and they walked it, and they worked on the way, and they came here. And so my grandfather, he came, and his elder brother was here, so he had an address written in English. He would show it to people on the road, and they directed him. In Crawford Market, his brother was working. And then he started working in the same shop, staying in the same shop. In fact, I think that during the civil disobedience movement, some Britishers sold their shops and went away. So I think my grandfather and his brother and some cousins, they got together enough money to buy one shop, and then they bought another shop, and they had a provision store called the National Stores. And then after independence, because in our religion there is no mandate against drinking liquor, and in fact the din cart, which is it's a commentary on the Zoroastrian religion, din cart, it says that in order to be a true Zoroastrian, it's not enough that you wear the sadara and the kasti. You should have a bit of wine every night. So maybe that's to maintain a good health or whatever. But anyway, this is just an interesting aside. But my granddad, after independence, he got a liquor license, which must be liquor license number 3 for Bombay, and he opened a liquor shop. Okay, so that liquor shop still survives in Crawford Market, and you get the cheapest kind of liquor there. Means cheapest Indian-made foreign liquor and other stuff there. So it's still there. So this is what they could do.
Who is the owner now?
My mother used to be part owner, and along with her cousin. That means the children of my grandfather and his younger brother who ran the shop. So
Still they are running shop.
It's still there. They're still running it, and so it's there. And it was a provision store before that, and then it became a liquor store after independence. And then what is the other thing? Anyway, so this is the long and short of the second migration that I know of. Okay, and Rashid was saying that his grandfather, his mother's father, came, and they had nowhere to stay. He used to sleep under the in the night in Lal Bagh, in the shops, where he worked there and all. And finally, he got enough money and set up a chai shop, a tea shop, because that's all they could do. They could make tea and they could make bread. They knew how to bake bread. So that's why you have many of the earliest bakeries in Bombay started by Iranis, and now you have this Irani chai, which is a chai which is a lot of boiled milk and stuff like that. It's thick chai, and it's called Irani chai. And now it's all the rage. In Pune, we have a whole franchise of stores, not franchise. There's an Irani family, Muslim Irani family, which runs these beautiful tea shops called Irani chai shop. What is it called? Irani cafe. Okay, and they have these high ceilings. They have the handicrafts from Iran hanging on around the walls. Then the Takhte Jamshid, photographs of Takhte Jamshid, which is the Persepolis and all. And you get bun maska, you get brun pav, which is actually a kind of French bread, the bragel, which the Iranis popularized here. So there's a hard outside and a soft inside. And then you put nice butter, hot butter on it, and dip it in your sweet Irani tea and have it. It's like heaven. you know. So you get it in all the Irani bakeries and Irani chai joints in Bombay and Pune, at least. I'm sure maybe in elsewhere, maybe in Hyderabad and all over there is. In fact, there's some shop like that open in London also, I heard. Anyway, so you get brun pav, you get bun maska, you get keema, you get cutlets, mutton cutlets, you get custard and stuff like that in these places. So this is all they could make. So they worked really hard, and they had these wood-fired ovens at that time. So because they did whatever they knew how to make tea, they knew how to make bread. So even though they didn't know the language completely, they set up these things, and because they made good stuff, they became popular.
What is your opinion? Because Iranian chai is actually without milk. But
Yeah,
now
yeah,
they,
yeah.
they added milk in. How,
Yeah.
how it happened?
I think this is to do with British people, because I think British people added milk in their tea. You know, I'm not sure, but this is where the milky chai came from. Otherwise, or maybe it's Indian, or maybe India always had tea with milk, because in Iran you just have that
Yes,
what's it?
black tea.
Black tea, you know, which is brewed in that samovar, you know, which is there in every house. At least it's there in all the houses I went to when I was a kid, and I went to Iran, and you get that a lump of sugar in it and drink
Yes.
that. But here the Irani chai is a milk tea. So I don't know that there's a history, but maybe because of India they used to have milk in their tea right from time immemorial.
How was
So
your experience when you went to Iran in your childhood?
I went when I was 11 years old, and with my mother and my brother, and we met our people there, our cousins, and our aunts and uncles and all. I mean, they looked like us. I mean, we're the same race. And firstly, I was quite taken aback because everybody hugs and kisses each other there. You know, it's just they would kiss on both the cheeks and all. Men, women. I mean, this is a very normal kind of greeting. So I was just stiff because that's not what was done here to us. Except our parents would hug us, but others would not. So that was the first startling thing, you know. And then I thought it was fantastic, you know. It was like so open and loving, and it was good. But that's why I'm a very hugging kind of person, if you ask my friends.
What type of memory you have when you visited Iran and Tehran? Can you tell me something? How
Oh,
was
I
that?
have memory of eating fabulous food. Okay. Uh, of course, I think nothing can beat Indian food, but it was really nice. The juje kebab, where the full chicken pieces are like plated like that and brought. And the cello kebab, which was, we thought it was yuck because they actually break a raw egg into that hot rice, which has got a kebab below it of meat and all. I mean, you know about that. And so anyway, we had this very nice food and things like that, and the paya soup type of things that we
How
had.
developed was Iran that time? How
How-
you observed Iran?
See, it was under the Shah at that time. Okay.
Okay.
So it was very modern and it was damn clean. I mean, the thing that hits you about Iran is, of every city of Iran, is that the level of cleanliness is really high. Okay.
How many Iranian women at that time you saw in chador or burqa?
Oh, none. They all had this flowing hair, and it was all dyed red, and you know, mehendied and stuff like that. And they were dressed in American type of clothes, and it was all very modern. You know, much more than here at that time. So of course there were some who were wearing the hijab, but very few. I cannot remember now. Too many people wearing hijab. And it was modernity had come to Iran, you know. It was like that. I mean, whatever I understood, and it was very westernized. We went to Tehran, we went to Isfahan, Shiraz, which are slightly more culturally rich places, and our grandfather took us. Saw that we went to all the pilgrimage places of all the pilgrimage places of the Iran Zoroastrians have to deal with those who withstood the Islamic invasion so many millennia ago. Every one of them. There's one on top of a hill, which is there is a woman lying with a child. It's as if it's carved out of stone. I cannot remember. It's called Pire something, and it's on top of a hill. And it's supposedly that my grandfather said that was the prince and one of the maids was running away with the prince to save him from being killed by the marauding Islamic invaders, and she reached the top of a hill, and then she prayed to God that she should be, she could save this child,
Spare.
and then they turned into stone or into that thing, and they still worship. I've been into
It's
that.
called
site.
Chak Chak.
That is not Chak Chak. I don't know. I only remember.
Was it near Yazd?
Yeah, all this is in.
Chak Chak.
Yeah.
Chak Chak. I'm
Okay.
sure.
No, then there's another one, which is that where that woman's chador is stuck out. Like she's supposed to have like Sita. Our
No, that is
Sita.
Chak Chak. That is
Chak Chak,
No,
not
that
that
is
this
Chak
thing.
Chak.
So Chak Chak is that where the woman ran in order not to be violated, in order not to be forced to convert, to
Yes.
save her life to be converted to Islam. So she prayed to God that the earth should swallow her, and she was buried or what, but her chador, part of her chador is left out. Now, my grandfather said that you can't see any part of it because people keep touching it over the centuries and it's gone, obviously, it's not going to last long. And that's what we heard. But that's next to that place is a natural spring. So that is known as Pir-e-Sabs. I remember this very clearly. Then the other place, and each of these Pirastans, these Tirthastans, these pilgrimage spots, have got their own festival, Urs, where some day of the year, Zoroastrian people from different villages in Yazd and Taf, they go there, and it's a real festival. It's an Urs, they collect, they have food together, they have music, and they have prayers together and stuff like that to that saint. So that is that one of that woman who was swallowed by the earth in order to, so that's a legend, in order to save her from being converted. The second and the third, what I remember, is a mountain which is completely white. It might be limestone, okay, but the legend is that there was a milkmaid who at the time of the invasion, she tried to flee the invaders who were trying to grab her and take her away or violate her, whatever, and she ran up the hill, and the pail of milk fell, and it covered the hill with white milk, and that's why that hill is white, and then she was not to be found, that God saved her. So it must be limestone, that I don't know, but that's also one of the Tirthastans. What I remember, I cannot tell you the exact names, and of course neither my mother or my grandmother are alive. That was the thing. Okay, the other thing that day we were talking about is that my grandmother and mother used to converse with each other in Dari, and her father also used to speak to her in Dari. I don't know Dari, but I can understand bits of it. Like I know some, definitely the word for woman is enog, the word for man is merdog, the word for child is vachog. If something is expensive, they say grun on, it's expensive. And if something is cheap, they would say arzun on, arzun. That. So I think this was Dari, I don't think it was. But my mother knew how to read and write and speak Persian. Even my father knew to some extent. Though his was a very old Iranian family was settled into, but her parents had come, so therefore they knew Persian, they taught her Persian and things like that. But she didn't remember when she was older, and she couldn't teach us. But one thing about my parents is that, especially my father, he was participating in the freedom struggle as a young student, and so he always told me that there's a tendency in our community that we are very parochial, we keep together, and we only have Parsi friends, and Zoroastrian friends, Parsi or Irani and all that. He said, you're an Indian, okay, and you must integrate with Indian people, and you need to learn the language, you need to have friends who are non-Parsis and non-Iranis. You need to you need to be totally Indian from your blood on, like deep down inside you, your soul should be Indian. That was a very important insistence of my father. So I'm really grateful to him but then what happened is that after telling me all this, that you should have non-Parsi and non-Irani friends, encouraged us to have people from all communities, including, and another thing is they didn't have any of that caste feeling. I mean, as far as I can remember, we had only Dalit servants with us, and yeah, I was brought up by Dalit women and my mother, and my father particularly used to uh, pointed out Brahmanical tendencies in the city of Pune, because it was the headquarters of the Brahmins, Arsis and all. And he had been a victim of that in his college, Brahmin, what we say Brahminism. So he was very particularly used to educate us on the aspects of Brahminism. From where I couldn't understand it then, it's only when I grew up and became political I understood it. Anyway, but for all this, my father, when I went and asked him that I wanted to marry my boyfriend when I was 21 years old, who was a Tamilian Brahmin, my father absolutely refused and said that you can go ahead and get married, but you're dead to us and you can't enter a house again or come in our horizon ever again in my life. So even though he wanted to be an Indian, he wanted to preserve the marriage and all was concerned, he wanted endogamy. So that is the problem, I feel. But now I think most Parsis are intermarrying, and it's been widely accepted, intermarriages in the community. Yeah.
How do you see the future of Zoroastrian community?
In India.
Yes.
See, look at my family. In this house, there used to be 14 people staying at one time. Okay, it's big enough to accommodate 14. Today only I am there. The reason is they've either died or they've migrated. Okay, so my brothers have migrated. They studied abroad and they lived abroad, and now one is about to become an Australian citizen. The other has been an American citizen for many years. So that's the fate. Those who are well off and who can afford to migrate and who are want to be they can't make it here or they migrate at a very young age, they are that's how it is. They migrated, people migrated, or people so you have a very dwindling population here. Secondly, this rule that if you intermarry, if the woman, if the mother of the child is Parsi and the father is non-Parsi, that child cannot become part of the religion. The Navjot cannot be done, and he or she cannot become part of it. But if the father is Zoroastrian and mother is not, the priests allow the Navjot and for the child to be absorbed in the community as a full-fledged Zoroastrian. I think this is strange, weird, because you can always only be sure who your mother is, okay? And not to doubt anything, but I'm just saying. And so I think that, but now there are certain Parsis who have set up dadgas. That means they are the fire temple of the lowest order, where even you can go and see what's happening and be part of the whole procedure. And there are rebel priests who conduct the marriages in Zoroastrian tradition, you know, of people from the community marrying people from outside. Then there are rebel priests who conduct the Navjots of children whose mother is a Parsi but whose father is not Parsi. Okay, so I think we have to salute these rebel priests because they keep the religion alive, you know, for whatever it's worth in India. And though they are much, they're talked about in whispers and not in very laudatory terms. I would laud them because they are doing a service to religion more than anything else. But I think the fear about Parsis and Iranis where the strict maintenance of endogamy was concerned was also that the Parsis were pretty rich by that time and owned a lot of assets, you know, especially in Maharashtra and other places. So they felt that if their Parsis lose their pristineness and other people may convert to religion in order to grab money, the land and the money and all the powers. I don't know what this thing was, but anyway, endogamy persists even till today to some extent, even though there are many more mixed marriages than there were when I was young. And so yeah, what else?
Thank you very much, Sanobar.